on. Alright, hello, friends. Let's see if you can hear me. I'm just going to quickly play back, make sure people can hear me. If you're in chat, just say if you can hear me. Let's see if you can hear me. Alright, sounds okay. It's a little loud still. Let me just turn down my volume on my headset. Alrighty. Let's turn that down. Okay, that's good. I'll just turn down it. Is that good? Is the audio good in your channels? Oh, in your... Yeah, can you hear me talking and it's not too quiet and it's not too loud? It's the audio, that is. It's not too... Yeah, quiet. Sounds good. Looks good. Alright. I'm just going to be enjoying my English breakfast this morning. I was supposed to be finished breakfast, but had issue with the lights. So, yeah, here we are, enjoying English breakfast. Box says is correct. It's 0541. That is in the morning. So, yeah, it's the usual time I get up. It's 5. So, yeah, good times. So, Selenium PowerShell module that I've been working on. So, a fair bit's going on. One of the key things that's happened is I've kind of finished most of the actual code itself, and now I'm moving into unit testing to make sure that what we're actually writing and just fixing some issues within the unit tests. But basically, we're just going to be focusing on unit tests today. Product looks really good. I've also been working on a test site as well. So just wrote a really basic React test site. I haven't fully finished it yet, so I'm going to build the functionality out. But the goal there is to have integration testing done against the test site, which makes it a little bit easier to write a pipeline for. So essentially within the CI pipeline or within this locally, you can basically start a React site. Not sure whether we're going to run it in a Docker image or not. And basically you can kind of just run your unit test against that React site, make sure that, your integration test against the site, make sure that the module's up to scratch and it's working as expected. The only problem with it is that basically if there's any sort of changes between the actual production version of Microsoft, effectively there'll be work required to actually keep them in sync. As per se, you have to kind of keep them in sync. So that's what's happening there. That's basically, yeah. So I think that's the best way I could implement some sort of integration testing within the solution without actually having to go and test against production. Which is not really what you want to do, especially when they're sitting behind a username and password. So in this instance, I think this is the best way to kind of test it. If Microsoft can, provide a dev instance or something like that, which we can actually test against, that's fantastic. But I don't think they will, because why would you? So I think it'll probably be a case of just basically having to manually keep feature parity with that solution, which is not the end of the world. Most of the times I'm not going to be changing things left, right, and center. Yeah, so anyway, let's get stuck into it. So you can see here, I've pretty much written all the unit tests for the private function. So generally, there's a few there. And then basically I've just written most of them there, so you can see that. And basically I've gotten the PowerShell working now, so that the pipeline, so GitHub Actions will actually now invoke the pipeline, which is good. So that's all going well. A couple of little issues there that I need to fix, but it's working. So that's the first thing, which is good. So I'm unit testing now. I'm getting that kind of set up. I'm running now within our actual pipeline, which is good. So let's keep going and let's go write some unit tests for the public functions, aka the commandlets. So you can see here, I think that these configuration files are probably that directory is probably going to disappear. Not sure what I'm going to do with that. I think it's probably going to disappear because I don't think we need it anymore. So for those who haven't been following, we've refactored the code now so that it's now a domain-specific language. So effectively, you just write MVP activity, you can pass things in, it will support. It's got some smarts within it, so it can support different things, and then you just specify the value and what's the name of what you want to set up effectively of the value, and then it basically goes and finds it and then sets it. So this was obviously a lot more convoluted, so we've obviously simplified that, which is really, yeah, I think this is probably going to all go in the bin sooner or later. But now, since it's been refactored as a domain-specific language, it's kind of irrelevant. And then we've basically added a whole bunch of extra resources that's needed. So one of the things that it does need is I've added a HTML form structure. So I didn't want to have to do this, but I did it because it's better for validation in terms of internal validation. Like, so what happens is it's able to keep track of what fields need to be set, what fields are mandatory, what's not. But at the same time, though, using this approach and keeping track of this means we can actually format our outputs. So you can see here we've got a format. This data set effectively connects to this one. So if it matches the name, so if you've got date or URL is a good example, it'll actually automatically attempt to format that URL and make sure that it's up to scratch. So that's one of the things that it does, which is cool. The other thing you can see here is that, actually I'm going to turn the fan on, sorry. It's summer, it's a bit hot. The other thing that's really good about this as well is that we have a new set. So effectively, when it generates the object from this data set, it'll basically create an additional column called is set, and it'll set them all to false. And then ultimately, as each value is updated, it will actually reflect that. So when it actually goes to save the activity, it ensures that these have all been set correctly. And that's really it. So let's get stuck into it. So let's write some unit tests. So we're going to start with area. You see here they're fairly small as well. They're not a large amount of code. 32. Speaking of that, I'm probably going to fix this up now. Actually, I don't think we need that because we can just put it inside the PowerShell data file. Come to think of it. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here prior to doing that is any of the functions. G'day, how you going? Love PowerShell. That's good. It's good to know. Any of these, how's your day going? Evening, morning? Yeah, so you've got the portal. So what I'm planning to do here is I'm going to not export the module member using the commandlet. What I'm thinking I might do is export using the PSD file. I can basically define what functions need to go in there. And the easiest way to do that would be to just iterate through the public folder and grab all the functions from that and then just basically shove them in there. So if I do that, it means that my loader doesn't need this. I can get rid of that now. That's completely irrelevant. So effectively, before that, I needed to set an error preference to silently continue because export module member can only be done within a PSM1 file. But if the way that I'm building the module, we can actually run the build script now and see what it does. Yeah, it's running PowerShell 7. But anyway, like we can run the build, so it will yeah, we can just, sorry, I'm just having a bit of a memory, I'm just having a bit of a thought process. Yeah, so it's built in the module manifest, so add the module manifest, that's one thing we need to do. But effectively, yeah, so you could see here the destination that when it creates the module, it'll just be a module PS1 file. And then we can use the PSD file to actually reference the module PS1. And then basically from that, we can then interpolate, or we can add the exported commandlets, and the rest will just behave as functions. And that way it's a little bit cleaner. We don't have to muck around with that. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, day's good, just working. Oh, you're at work. I'm guessing that's US time. Yours? Well, I just woke up, so I'm having my English breakfast, and it's 6 a.m. in the morning at the moment. Do you create any PowerShell GUI apps? Not really, no. I'm honestly, I'm not a fan of it. The only reason why is because PowerShell it's when you create GUI apps, effectively you're registering your clicks and things like that, which is perfectly fine. But the click, when you click something within a GUI form, so let's say we just use balloon forms as an example. If you select a button, because PowerShell is single-threaded, it will only execute that specific, like it'll raise that event in the main memory space, which means if you have a form behind it, the form effectively becomes unresponsive, and it'll actually, if you click on the form, it'll turn gray. So you got to be very careful with how you structure your logic. The way I kind of do it is just literally just go, nah, I'm not doing that anymore, and then I kind of just build a backend. If I have to use PowerShell GUI, I've done it like a few times. I will, but at the end of the day, though, I generally, if I'm going to do it, I'll just use the C# and build an app. It's a little bit easier. Yeah. Yep, West Coast, fantastic. So you guys, I'm guessing that's lunchtime there for you guys. No, afternoons. I think it's afternoon for you guys. But that's me anyway. Like, and I think it's each their own. Personally, I find that PowerShell's a bit. It's not the best tool for GUIs for me, but and yeah, I will be using C#. So, but you know, you still can build nice GUIs with it. It's just that, you know, you've got that limitation, and you can get around it with things like that, but with other ways of doing it. But like the time it takes me to do that, I'm just going to go into C# and build it. So anyway, so let's actually write some unit tests. Let's go ahead and clean that up. So connect to the portal. I'm just gonna delete the test. Delete that for? After all, remove variable. Let's see first scopes. No, we're not deleting that. That's just okay. I just kind of deleted something. Interesting. Let's go have a look at that test. Test SE activity types dot test. This is what you have git. Yeah. Okay, I accidentally deleted something. Alright, let's just discard that. I'm gonna put that back. Fantastic. Alright. Let's just stay here. Build script support. Just do that, push, and be done with it. So how much how long have you been running PowerShell for, Mr. Harry? Almost. 3 years. Nice. Have you found that? I'm just trying to think. How like did you do any coding before that? Like, were you like, did you step in from a different language, or was it like completely new? Mainly just AD functions. Yeah, nice. That's really, I think that's really where any sysadmin, if you want to get stuck into PowerShell, it's AD, Exchange Online, Exchange Local. Like, those are kind of the big four that I think most of the time you use. I did the same. It was AAD, Exchange Online, Local. Admittedly, though, back in those days, we didn't have X365 and that, so it was, AD and Exchange. Yeah. Anyway, trying out some unit tests. Did you? Yeah, I got into Visual Basic when I was made sheets with friends for school classes. Haha. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did that. So my background is, so I graduated in 2007, but I started learning VBScript in 2005. Before that, it was Bash. Like, I was fluent in DOS since 2003. Yeah, then went Java, Python, and then PowerShell. Yeah, yeah, that sounds alright. Like, yeah, I did Java. Hated Java. Like, that was one of the big problems I had. Java was so. Now, admittedly, I was quite junior in it, but yeah, I wasn't a fan of it. Python, like, I learned Python. Python was a lot. I like Python, but at the same time, though, I hated it because it was like very, space specific. So, everything had to be spaced correctly, which honestly was an absolute headache back in those days when you had an ISC that didn't do any support for that. But yeah, made sheets with friends for school classes. Yeah. Yeah, back in the days, I wrote a lot of VBScript. I wrote a VBScript which did a number of things. One of the things was essentially as a remote control tool, which you could like start processes, find out what computer, like you could target computers and then like remotely shut them down, and that was without admin perms or permission. So it'd have a VB script which would run like a server, a service on there, and it used file share files for communication. So I could send a file over that machine, and it basically would process the file and then process the job. And oh man, I had so much fun with that. Like, and you could send keystrokes as well, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, and then I wrote an MSN Messenger script, which was atrocious. Like, it was absolutely atrocious. But yeah, it's kind of funny though as well. Private tests, public. Okay, let's start a new one. So let's call it area. Now, area. I'm just thinking, what's area? Okay, yeah, we can test area. The only reason I'm just kind of thinking about, one of the things I am planning to do is refactor the code so that MVP activity, so this function here, if I should go to the logic, so MVP activity effectively can pass a CSV file. So you just basically say MVP activity, literally the parameter would be CSV file, and then you'll just pass it, and then it would just make it so. The other thing I want to be able to do is pass it an argument list that contains multiple, like an array of parameters similar to test cases in Pesta, and that means that everything kind of has to be moved down a leg, because we need to be able to do a for each on each of those. And the reason why is I can't use a begin, process, and end is because I'm reluctant. That is because of the CSV file. Ultimately, is that you can't access the parameter within the begin block. So if that's the case, it means that basically the CSV path can only be exposed in the process block, which means then that's where it has to be done, which means we have to move everything down a leg. Yeah. Yeah, I can't stand Python, but it's good for quick and it's quick for good order. It's quick and good for automation. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. It's a really good language. Like I don't really, I like Python. Like it's a good language. And the thing is that like most of those languages are so similar. Like right now, I'm writing a fair bit of Node and React, and it's all JavaScript. So and JavaScript, Python, PowerShell is a little bit more out on a leg, but generally speaking, they're object-oriented languages. So once you understand the logic flow and how to structure things correctly, and understand the ins and outs, so what methods do what and how you can call a method, then you're fine. Like a good example is with an ES6, you can basically do, you've got different types of methods which you can call your arrow functions, which I think was introduced in 5. But effectively you can simplify, like you don't have to obviously write traditional JavaScript, you need to write, you call a method for a shortcut. So you can use, map, where map would be the equivalent, the map method would be the equivalent to where object within PowerShell. So once you understand that, and then you can basically use an arrow function as a lambda expression, it's kind of, it just starts coming along. All right, so unit tests. Okay, so first thing we need to do is actually work out what our logic is. So we only got 46 lines of code. We've got, I'm still trying to work out what the best. Okay, so one of the things I did write was a method called a function called try. It's a tentative try. So effectively, you can set a try catch. It runs like a try catch, but it has retry capabilities within it. Obviously, because it's a commandlet and it has scopes and things like that, it can get a little bit funky in how you manage that. So the one thing that I've been trying to work out lately is how I set. Basically, I'm just going to quickly go and have a look at try, the unit test. I want to be able to basically run some code, run some logic, and then after a period of time, it breaks. So it initially starts, it breaks, and then on the third time it succeeds. So that's one of the logic, that's one of the unit tests that I want to be able to write. So effectively we're testing to make sure that it has the capability to be able to actually retry multiple times, a set number of times, and then succeed after that definition has been met. I think the way I did it was when I know I did it within try itself. So let me check, where was it? So this is a test cases here. So go and try get random. Get random. Yeah, that's how I've done it. So effectively, if the external, I set a script block outside it, and but the thing is that's within the try logic itself. So I can't necessarily test this without writing an integration test, but that's fine. We can just use integration test to nut that out. That's fine. Okay, cool. So we've got a begin block. We need to test our call stack. So I've already tested the call stack within this. So effectively, we can just go ahead and mock them off. We don't actually need to test any sort of logic with that. So if the conditions don't get met, they throw a terminating error. So we don't actually need to worry about that. We've already got that test here. So for example, test unit driver, or test the Selenium driver. So let's just go ahead and just make some notes. We need to start mocking these. Now, interestingly though, how many different types of parameters? So the next thing I'm looking at now is I'm going to try and work out how many tests that we're going to need. Looks like, so we have 1, 2, that's 2 code paths right now. It's mandatory, so that's good. 3, 4. So that's 4 code paths here. Yeah, we can mock start sleep. All right, cool. So one of the fun things about the Selenium module is that, the Selenium module, the MVP website, is that when I automated my submission initially, it broke pretty quickly when you start smashing it. So obviously, if you're submitting like, multiple jobs, JavaScript kind of starts to play havoc. So the way that you can kind of get around it, but what happens is you can select the drop down box. So let's say you can select the drop down box, and what it does is it dynamically fills the rest of the form out for you. But if you do that multiple times, like let's say if you have to do it 50 times, eventually what starts happening is JavaScript doesn't run and it doesn't complete the automatic dynamic generation of the form. And so you actually have to check. So what I do is I basically wait for the JavaScript to execute here. What this does is it looks for this text. And that might need to change. But essentially it looks for this text. And what happens is, if that text is not there, it completely, that actually needs to change, just thinking about it. There's a problem with that. If obviously the form doesn't exist, if the form, the JavaScript fails to run, obviously the elements don't appear. So then what happens then is that obviously this fails, and then it'll actually, obviously it'll get caught here, and it actually tries to reset it. So it resets it by setting the default top level drop down value and then trying again. And this can have, like, I've seen this break like a few times, so it's really good to have. And I've actually realized this is a bug here, because what it's looking for is views of answers. But that's a value that's specific to a single item, so we actually need to fix that by matching the activity type. Get activity type. We're going to need to go and get the actual text that we want to go and check the unique text for that specific value, which I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. I might even just write a nested function which basically takes the HTML elements that's there and makes sure that they're all present prior to actually continuing. That's what I might do. I might actually do that. Let's add to here. So we might as well actually, let's do that now. Let's actually do that now. So what we need to do, so if we've got the area, selecting the value, we get activity types. Oops. Trying to find get activity types. This is interesting. It's taking its sweet time. Let's just find it manually. Okay, so it enumerates all the activity types. We're looking for selected value, which is going to be whatever it is. Let's say if the activity type matches, we need to do a lookup to get the HTML form structure. So what we need to do here is use, let's say, HTML form, HTML form structure. And that's the name of the area that we're getting. So we can just basically say it. Actually, autocomplete would actually work here, which is not. we could just pass in the name, which is the selected value. Now, if HTML form structure breaks, what's going to happen? I think it should throw a terminating error. Oh, it actually does it there in area. So we can actually just do this. Put it up there, and then basically, we can bring it up the stack like so, so we can get out the form structure. And then using our form structure, it also helps if I can spell. Using our form structure, we can then ascertain whether what's going on there. So, I'm just thinking out loud here. Just going to quickly run my loader because I actually just want to run it. Ah, damn it. That's fine. They're the configurations. Hello, good afternoon. Hello, how are you going? Jay Mundell. How is your morning, afternoon, or evening going? Okay, so we're going to now sort out, just mulling this over on my mind. So we're going to get, so what I'm going to quickly do is just go get HTML form structure, say name, and let's go area. Could not match name with an area with HTML form structure. Ah, that's because it's just not area, it's article. ARTICLE. So you can see here, you get a list of data, and we also get some formatting content. So what we can do here is we can say, for each object, so it's going to essentially iterate through
You don't make up for your sins in the church. You do it in the streets. You do it at home. The rest is bullshit, and you know
it. Just thinking out loud here. So what we can do is just say, what are we? What's the goal here? What's the goal here? I'm just thinking out loud. Okay, so what we can do is we can just basically say, wait for JavaScript, element text. We can just go like so. So what happens? So what we're doing now is, all these HTML elements have to exist prior to actually setting the data. So effectively, it needs to have the HTML form set correctly based on our configuration. If it doesn't meet that, it won't actually. It'll stop and try again. So you can see article. There's different types. You've got article, I think. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ones of them. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, and then ultimately what it's going to do is look at the name. So we're not looking at the element. I could actually do a lookup on the element now. but I want to do the name because the name is actually custom for each specific type. So article, you can see here, it has a number of articles. The elements will remain the same. So you got annual quantity, annual reach. They generally say that the element ID stays the same, but the name changes. So let's just do that. It's been good. I've got to say that I like the dark blue theme you've got for VS Code. Thank you. This is actually, I totally stole this off Chrissy. So, and then I kind of tweaked it to make it myself. But this is 1984. So the theme is 1984. Yeah, so you can get the cyberpunk and all that. I've just gone with 1984. And then what I've done... I'm just going to jump over... just need to go and have a look at the settings JSON. And then what I've done is... where is it? So under the customizations here... I then basically made the functions white and then the comments gray. It doesn't do that by default, so I've kind of just tweaked that, and that's basically it. Yeah. So, yeah. All right, so we've got the area, so we fixed that, which is good. And this is going to be good because it means that we can actually kind of test this logic and see what happens here. We can actually see what happens when we have something that doesn't exist within this code execution path. So this might be a separate test in itself, which requires parameterization. Yeah. All right, so we got standard code execution path. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Something fails there. 5. Because this will be the 5th here. So it'll create an error, terminating error, fall down in here. Yeah. I haven't got a chance to mess around with Selenium yet. Can you invoke JavaScript stuff from PowerShell like in the inspect element window? Yes and no. So the way that it kind of works is that you kind of just like it runs because it runs native JavaScript, so you can still do JavaScript within it. Like it obviously executes JavaScript. But you don't have that limitation. You don't have that capability to actually execute JavaScript itself. But you do have the capabilities to be able to essentially, you know, within the inspect window, go and find, you know, this element, update that element, and do something with that element. Select a drop-down box, you know, invoke click, those kinds of things. And that's really what it's kind of doing here. So this is just a really fancy wrapper for a lot of that stuff. Yeah. If I have a little bit more extra time, I might be able to show you what it looks like, but I kind of want to get this done, and I'm kind of been dilly-dallying for a little bit. So, yes but no. Yeah, my favorite answer. That's pretty much how it is at the moment. I think in the future, like Atom, it's kind of like just a module that Atom kind of whipped up, but I do think that that module's got a long way to go. I think it's something that a lot of people have been wanting to have for quite some time. So I do think that it's just, obviously he needs to find maintainers for that. So, but it's something that I think is probably going to be further supported in the future because people are going to be using it for their testing. No, it's all right. I don't mind having a chat. It's always good to chat with everyone. All right, so let's start writing our tests. So I'm just going to put standard execution. All is good on. No, it's just execution. So I'm not going to parameterize these kinds of these tests. And generally speaking, the standard execution test is literally just testing to make sure that this works. So we can say, okay, so what do we need to mock? So we need to mock So let's just mock. No, my IntelliSense is broken at the moment because I think it's because I've broken Windows subsystem for Linux, the WSL. It's kind of just, yeah, broken. I am going to mock. All right, done that. Okay, so we've mocked that. That's perfectly fine. We're going to need to mock get activity types. Let's just mock that. This is driving me nuts. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to restart this. There we go. Now I've got my IntelliSense back. Need to run my loader again. Just quickly run a loader. Need my root path. That's fine. Just need to do this. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what we do here? Go back to unit tests. So we're just going to say name. Okay, we don't need anything in format. We just need nothing. Say false is required. I'm not testing the data here. I just need it to be call this. Oh, actually, I might need to use this over and over again. Now, for me, just over and over again, I'm just going to quickly build a function. Just get mocked. So I don't want to have to repeat this code. And what we can do here is return an array. Just add that in. Do that, and then we can basically just return a quick array of different values. Like is required and is set don't really need to be messed with, so I don't particularly think that's anything that we need to focus on. But basically, I just need some data to work with, and I think this is perfectly fine. So we can just get mocked activity types like so. What did you just say is do that. That way we don't have to go and call this a gazillion times. Honestly, I could probably even wrap all this in its own function. When we're actually testing this code, so yeah, it's going to get used a few times. So when we're testing this code, it'll be used. This ooh, wrong. So it's not activity types. This is HTML structure. So we need to mock it. So HTML activity types. Get activity types. So get activity types. think I've mocked it. How did I mock that? So we're just going to mock the data in directly. So I have a HTML file that basically is a HTML capture of the form, and I'm just basically using it to mock that. So what it does is it basically does a lookup within that form, looking for all the activity types, and then it'll just return that. But what I'm looking for, we don't necessarily need that. I could just call it with the mock data. This is what we'll do. I'm kind of on the fence about this because it shouldn't be. I'm on the fence about this because I don't think I really should be doing this. If that's the case, after all, we need to tear this down. So it's going to do a move variable, say name, MVP driver. What's it? Scope. Global pause. So we need to kill that. So after that, we've got our area, we've got our MVP driver. We need to now. We can just call it. That's what we're going to do. Actually, oh, no. We should mock it. I don't want to mock it with the data itself because I still need to call it. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. This is what I'm going to do. We're just going to mock it. So the easiest way to do this is it's going to essentially return a custom PS object. Just trying to remember how it's structured. The problem with this is that we're effectively disconnecting the two data types, which I don't particularly want to do because that's going to cause issues down the line. If we change the data type, it means that it'll change there. Excuse me. Okay, so it's just name and value. That's what we're looking for. So we can just basically say add that. Now the value, I'm just going to say test grid. So effectively, it'll just return that. We don't really need. We can just say test grid just 3. Data integrity, just make it a generic object. It's not that. Essentially, the problem that I'm worrying is that they're disconnecting the two types. So what I'm mocking here, if it changes, so if I decide to change the structure, this test will still pass, even though there's a structure change, because I'm just using mock data that's disconnected from it, which means the test will pass, which makes the test bad. So I think I need to build a I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but ultimately, if I just offload it into a function here at the moment, that's perfectly fine. But I think if I build a structure that a data structure, a mocking structure, which allows me to kind of connect them all so that then they're all using common data, then it's not an issue. So what we can do here is just say, save that, and then we'll do this. Data integrity. Oh, so yeah, that's exactly right. So you're kind of disconnecting the two. I recently took an assessment on Pluralsight saying in the top 15 of PowerShell users, but the more I keep going, I feel like I still have a lot to learn. Not about just programming, not about PowerShell programming channel. Yeah, that's honestly, I took the PowerShell test and I vary. Like the highest I've got was in the top 2%, and then it dropped down. I was like in the top 30, and I went back up to the top 10. And I was like, oh man, like it really depends. Like whether you have your good days and your bad days, and generally like I'm like, ah. But I think the key thing with writing code I found is that it's understanding the logic flow. Then once you understand the logic flow, is being able to actually understand the ins and outs of how code works within that specific language, and then be able to use those ins and outs to the advantage to actually make the language look good, make your logic actually like look good. In this instance, this is a complete variation of PowerShell. So all this code here is is a domain specific language. So I'm actually breaking a lot of rules to make it a domain specific language. So I'm actually using global vars and script vars because basically I have to have functions to be able to talk to other functions that are basically children of the same parent. So the parent function. So it can get really tricky to manage, but at the same time though, yeah, it's just really that's the nature of code. So there's no real right way or wrong way to write code. And you can see here, I'll quickly show you. So effectively, this is what the output should look like. So it looked like a domain-specific language like Pesta. So we're not actually writing. The original logic was this, just to provide perspective. So this is the refined logic. This is the original logic, which was. So this is what it was originally. So effectively, it was going to be a function that people could write, and they could call the activity, and it looks more PowerShell-y. But then I was like, I think it's better to be a domain-specific language because it's just simpler, and it means that anybody can use it, and it actually removes the PowerShell from it, and it makes it super easy to use. And then it means that it also simplifies it, so now that I can actually pass a CSV file, and it can do some very interesting things with that. So yeah. So honestly, like the more like the way that I've always found with any sort of coding is that learn as much as you like. There's always going to be people that are going to be smarter than you. That's the one thing I've known. But the thing is that having the approach to actually like just learn as much as you possibly can, then you can take what is good and then discard what is bad. So a good example is I knew a person who had a very, very, very good PowerShell programmer, had a really good ability to follow and articulate good logic flow and be able to kind of put together ideas on how to do automation in ways that you kind of don't think about. And I'm like, okay, cool. but the problem is that it's his code, he wrote in such a specific way, and it was only that way, and he wrote things to be overly complicated. The logic was like, the key thing about writing logic is that it has to be maintainable and it has to be testable. And a lot of the logic was just very, very complicated, which, okay, you know, which honestly, that some of that took rubbed off onto me. So I do make my logic a lot more robust. But at the same time, though, I'm like, I try to make sure that it's not super complicated, or if it is, document the living daylights out of it. And then the other things is simple things as well, is that he was using techniques that you don't use anymore within PowerShell. So, writing, it's a bit like, writing JavaScript for V1 when you have, this brand new function you can use in V5, and all our, endpoints are using V5. All our, servers are using version 5, then write for version 5. Like, you don't need to write for version 1. So he was very outdated. And the problem is that his biggest downfall was that he struggled to adapt and to learn something. Like, for me, I'm like, like right now I'm learning, say, Node, because I kind of know JavaScript. Earlier I'm just like, yeah, this is fine. I can, write Node quite comfortably now. I'd still take, I say comfortably, quite slowly, but still I can write Node quite comfortably. I'm quite comfortable around the language, and it only took me, I would say, 4 weeks to get up to speed, and then I'm up to speed. I'm like, I'm good to go. There's no problem. But it's just getting there. That's really it. Like, and the thing is that the more that you can learn from other people, and just seeing different programming styles, the better. So one of the things that I was talked about on Reddit with one of the guys was that he wrote logic effectively to be if else, and nesting if else's nesting if else's together. And the idea is to kind of, within PowerShell, is to rethink your logic structure to actually make it easier to read. So you can refactor that code to make it easier, more testable, more maintainable. So a better way to rewrite that code would be, what we do is we write the function that we're working with to be implicitly true or implicitly false. And so you have that implicity by, let me just quickly see if I can show an example. Okay, this is a really good example. So save MVP activity, this function is what we call is implicitly true. So what we're doing is we're assuming by the time you've reached the bottom of the code execution block is that everything has succeeded. But you can see there that we're not actually nesting any sort of if else. But what we're actually doing is we're using the if statement and then flipping the logic and then just using the not. So effective. So you can see here we're basically going, test SC driver. So this this function, when it executes, if it fails, it'll throw a terminating error. And if it throws a terminating error, it means that this entire code block will actually fail as well. Now, by the way, you've emphasized about good documentation. Do you have any recommended ways to do documentation, or generally rely on comments? I generally do comments and actual documentation. So right now I haven't actually finished my documentation. Like, I haven't even started it, to be honest. It's an empty MD file. But the key thing for logic is that you need to be able to articulate to the reader exactly what's going on there. Like, you don't particularly want to write something that's, overly complicated and then don't write like any sort of comment with it. And generally speaking, I will write comments as I go. It's easier to write as you go because it's fresh in your mind and you're able to articulate the thought better. If you come back 30 minutes later, you're too busy, your thought's already on another process, and that can kind of cause issues. But when you're saving, you can see here when we're saving the MVP activity, you can see here I'm basically throwing errors if there's specific criteria being met. So these specific, conditions. So these conditions are essentially terminating conditions to this function, which basically which causes the function to close. Now, I could rewrite this logic within nested if else statements, but I don't need to, because the only condition that we care about is if it fails. If it fails, we exit the function. Now you could use a return. I'm using throw because I actually need to throw back up to the parent, but you just use your return and you can actually close, you can effectively end the function without having to do anything else. And you can see here that I'm slowly going through here, and you can see again, we just try catching throw. So again, it's implicitly true. So the logic makes a lot more easy. It's a lot easier to follow when then versus having nested if-else statements. And the other advantage to this approach is using hash tables. I'll just quickly open up a bit of an example here. So one of the things is everyone, you guys will be familiar with splatting. So we're just going to go ran. And what we're going to do is we're going to say name is equal to VS Code. So let's say, so if we go get process, we can basically param, we can use splatting to, oops, did that wrong? Are you wrong? Don't tell me F8. Oh my goodness. Okay, splatting operator, what did I do wrong? Oh, because I did that, whoops. Let's see if that worked. No, my VS Code's broken. I'm not a process for VS Code. Okay, get process. Yes. It's not VS Code. Let's just do PowerShell. That was PowerShell here. Yeah, cool. All right, so now this is a really terrible example, but you guys will get this. So let's go ahead and rerun that. You can see here we can splat. Fantastic. But the thing is, you got to remember this is actually a hash table, and hash tables you can actually do things with. So we can create an empty hash table, and let's start actually starting adding keys to that. So we can just say key1. Let's test hash table key2. Let's test 2. Hash table. So you can see here, and this is the same as using the add method. So if you go hashtable.add, that's exactly the same as doing this. Jordan showed me, one of the guys from the user group, Jordan, he actually showed me this is, you can do that and it still works the same. So you can see here now we've built a hash table, which is really cool, which is a really good effect of, like, it means that we can dynamically build our commandlets. So if you're passing in, if you're needing to dynamically build something, that implicitly true approach means that you can do some really, really interesting logic. So for instance, if you've got a function that basically has, you know, this specific commandlet needs to run and you need to do like a specific action or something like that, you can effectively do your if condition. So we say condition, and say, yep, and then do something, you know, let's just say, then go hash table dot key3. And then you can effectively dynamically build your parameter set out without, and then with you say some start commandlet. And then we can basically splat it in. So you can dynamically build your code out by having the function to be implicitly true. It just makes a lot more sense with your logic, because then rather than having multiple start commandlets and then basing it on the condition, you just have a common hash table that you dynamically build out and then splat in. And that makes it a lot easier to kind of follow along, because then you go, okay, yep. And at the end of the day, worst comes to worst, you can just drop a breakpoint on line 16 and you can actually see what the parameters are if you need to. So it makes it really easy. That's one of the things I love about that approach, is that being implicitly true means that you make their code a lot more maintainable and a lot more readable. Anyway, back to unit tests. So standard execution, activity types. So if you guys got any questions, make sure you throw them through. I'm happy to answer questions. So let's go. We're gonna need to mock. What do we need to mock here? Find SEL. Oh, did we actually do that? Oh no, wrong one. I was like, what? Doing in there? Okay. So we got the HTML form structure, so we now need to select a drop down. So that's a string and that's a string. So what we can do here is we can just mock this. There doesn't need, like, we don't necessarily need to we don't necessarily need to do anything with it because it's null, what it returns. So we can just do that. Now, let's mock. The thing is, though, is that basically you kind of I'm going to mock start sleep as well. Now, what I'm going to do is group all the ones that we need to actually that are going to be common across the entire form, and the rest can kind of just be as is. So it's test call stack, where's that? Don't need to test that. Test driver, call stack sleep. Get activity types, HTML form structure. Honestly, that can probably get pulled up into there as well. Yeah, select drop down, that can just be fine. Okay, let's do that. The thing is that writing logic, I find, is that, like, a good example isn't, I've been writing PowerShell since 2012. So from 2012 to, I didn't write my first PowerShell module, so I was basically doing a lot of scripting, really, and basic scripting in 2012. And then it was about 2016 that I actually started writing my first module. So this is, quite a while down the line. And I found that as that time went, that I kind of slowly grew in how I wrote my logic. And then until I started writing a module, I kind of wrote my first module and it was rubbish. And then from that, yeah, I actually stepped into an automation role. And then my code just went, because you had to write, like, I was writing a lot of code, but significantly increased in terms of just quality, and it's just because, yeah, how you kind of structure your code. So we're just going to call this get. I can just do that. And the thing is, just, and again, like, this will change. So when I, come in a couple of years in the future, this will be all completely different. So, that's just really the nature of how you write code. You generally, will write code better. From time to time, you'll take the things that you like and you'll take the things that you don't like. Okay, so standard execution. We're going to mock all that. So we're just going to assume everything works, which is great. Let's just go to result. Now, area won't return anything, so we can't test the output, which is perfectly fine. So we need to go get activity types. We're just going to say test. So, and then what we're going to do here is just going to test the code execution path. We should have any, we'll know if we have any throws, so that's perfectly fine. We're just going to make sure that everything is fine. So, just need to quickly find a should. Oh, here we need one of these bad boys. Okay, let's go and start writing our citation. So, get HTML form structure. Now, I don't care what's in there. So if I do should invoke times, I'm going to use times here, and I'm just going to say at least 3 times. That's how long it's going to be. I don't want to have to wait for there for ages, so let's just, I don't want to count them out either, so I'm just going to say, actually we're just going to say it's going to at least run it once, but it's going to probably either, it's going to be greater or equal to 1. Interesting. I started May this year, but it was because my job is heavily focused on automation. PowerShell is the only thing that is, other than VBA, available, and was capable of doing most things I wanted to do. Do you still write VBA? Alright, so load is running, so we're going to just run this test. And then I'm going to see what happens. Okay, so we've got a pass test, but that doesn't mean diddly squat. So we are going to fail our test. So what we're going to do here is, let's just say, oh, we can test some data. We can basically say should not be, what's it? Always keep forgetting the ins and outs. Should not be, it's like null. That's it. I think like it should not be null or empty. That's basically the I don't care that I don't care about the data, but it basically shouldn't be null or empty. And I don't need to test the data. Don't need to, but we need to do this. And because I realize we're doing that, we need to tear it down after each step. So let's just go for each. Basically say oh, it's broken again. Now, the reason why I'm cleaning up is because I don't want anything mucking around with it. So I'm going to rerun the script. I want to make sure it passes, and then we're going to ooh, okay. Expected value, but got null or empty. Interesting. Could be a scoping issue, but it could be also a legitimate issue. Sort of, but not really. I wrote a few VBA scripts to show how things could be automated before I learned PowerShell. But after I learned PowerShell, I started to script things that I would normally do in Excel VBA in PowerShell and then using the COM application thingy. Okay, that's cool. You know you can use the interop, right? And there's also a module now. I think the module uses the interrupt as well, so you don't actually need to have Excel installed. No, the interrupt still requires Excel because you still need to load the DLL. So there's a .NET interrupt, which a .NET class that you can actually call directly without actually having to use the COM object. So let me see if I can go find it. Just quickly bring that up. Let's see. So I just chatted it in the link there, but essentially that class can be used to actually interact with Excel. I've done it with Word, but there's an interrupt, yeah, for Word as well as Excel. So yeah, you don't have to use the COM object. So it's just, yeah, but you still need to be installed. So anyway, stand execution. Why is it failing? Okay, let's go and drop. Start blasting breakpoints. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, it's got a value. It's probably because the scope is limited. That sucks. It should be outside that, but the thing is that Pesta behaves a little differently now when it comes to scope. I can't test it. I don't want to return anything because it doesn't need to have anything returned. I used to import Excel, but it's just a headache to get third-party modules installed or available for everyone to use. The one thing I would probably recommend if you want to do that is either use Choco and then deploy the package, or effectively you just have an install script that basically runs prior to it and just does the work for you. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, this module's not installed," and then just give up, and it's like, "Oh, okay, all right, okay." So let's just flip that to 0, and this test should fail, which means we've written an OK test. Cool. I'm just going to write a quick test and see what happens if we... Oh, no, because if we type area, yeah, it's going to want a value. Okay, cool. So what we can do now... All right, I have a department meeting, so thanks for chatting with me. No worries, mate. Anytime. Have fun. I'll talk to you next time. So we get stand execution. Let's actually write a... So in this instance, let's say there's going to be no activity types found. So let's just say bad activity type. That is the doesn't exist. Who would do that? Bad data. So we can still essentially do the same thing here, except get HTML form structure is going to now be just going to copy all that, and we're basically going to say 0. If it's 0 there, it's going to be 0 pretty much in the rest of it, so we don't actually need to test all that. And we can say should throw, and let's have a look at what the error is. We're just going to say should throw this. What I'm going to do is, instead of actually passing the value, because again, I don't care, I am just going to wildcard that. But the main thing is that we should see this specific error that gets passed, which is parameter selected value could not be found. Could reword that. That doesn't really make much sense to me right now. Okay, remove variables not recognized. Oh, we can get rid of these. They don't need to be there. Let's just rerun that. We've got 2 failed tests. Okay, we've got 2 pass tests. Great. Let's fail all make here. Make sure that it is good. It is all good. You can see there, passing back activity type that doesn't exist. Say that. Okay, so now we're going to pass some bad activity type that doesn't exist. I'm going to ask chat an interesting question, and yeah, see, this is actually going to spawn a story. What's the most interesting thing you've ever seen in a configuration file, like in terms of a comment or something from a user that's been put into a configuration file that you thought it was really funny? I'll throw that question out. What have you put? Yeah. So what have you seen put in a configuration file if that was funny or interesting? Very interesting to see if you guys have any funny stories. I've got a good one, so yeah, you guys might have a bit of a laugh, which is yeah. Passing a bad activity type that doesn't exist. Passing an activity type that has too many values. That so leave that question open for a little while, then you guys can have a bit of a go for it. All right, so what we're going to need to do here is we get HTML structure mock data. Now let's get activity types. So what we can do here is we can basically mock test SE driver, test full stack. We just don't care about those. We're not really. They're going to produce too many errors. We tested that. Off with. All right. So I got a really bit of a funny story for you guys. This is many years ago, back in the day of what was that, uni/TAFE. And there was. So we're in server class, and server class, this is when we're working with XP and Windows 2003 XP. We had this task where we installed the server, and then we had to back up our server to these external hard drives. And this is the days of USB 1, like not even USB 2, but USB 1, and it was agonizingly slow. Literally, you would spend the whole day just backing something up, and the class was that. And really it was just a waste of time. And it was on these slow, and I don't think they were SATA. I think they were PATA drives. These were so slow. And so basically, like, I remember just starting the backup. I'm like, nah, stuff this. I'm just going to kind of wing it and pray that no one's going to kill my operating system. And the reason why is because all the machines, you have obviously a computer lab, and what they did was they just had an extended partition, and every person kind of had their own little, like their own Windows server that they used. And one of the servers that was used, this obviously is back in the day of the NT loader boot.ini file. So you had the boot, they basically had a custom, you had the boot.ini file, and you edit, and add your specific boot loader entry in and point it to the partition that you want to mount, and then off it goes. And so we had more, like we had like 20 operating systems per machine. And so you'd start up and boot into it, and you basically have your name in there. So you just basically say, Michael's 2003 server, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we had a process where a class, like a couple of weeks later, where we had to basically learn how to do partitioning. And so we had this product called Paragon Partition Manager, and this is obviously back in the day. So this is before Windows 7 had the ability to dynamically partition on the fly. So the only way you could partition back in those days was partition the disk, and then that was it. Like, you couldn't extend, you couldn't shrink the disk, you could just partition the disk. And so what happened was with these machines was that they all had their little extended partition, perfectly fine, but we had to mess around with this partitioning software. And the thing was that we had to create a partition, extend it, blah, 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 and was kind of really, is what it is. And the process was agonizingly slow. It was, Paragon, basically, the way it did it, it didn't just, it actually had to move all this data around, and it was really, really quite clunky. But anyway, once we finished that, then you'd basically put everything back the way it was. And I remember on the machine to my left, the guy wasn't paying attention, and basically he deleted all the partitions of the extended logical on the extended partition. So that's all the lab computers, and there was like 20 there, and everybody lost everything, and they had to rebuild from scratch. Now, fortunately, he didn't touch my computer. I was so thankful. But I remember one day I had booted that computer up, and I saw on the boot.ini file, I see name. There's like this guy's name, and then after it is, I'm going to kill you, you beep, 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 beep. And I thought that was the funniest thing. Some guy was so upset that basically he was going to pass the guy's name. It was pretty funny. But that poor bloke had to rebuild back in. And this is before, infrastructure as code and all this kind of cool stuff that we had today. So people were kind of frustrated. Oh man, I could kind of sit there and laugh because it wasn't me, but at the same time, though, I'm kind of like, I'm glad it's like, I feel for the people that lost everything. But thankfully, it's not, didn't make them lose their, course. But I still remember that to this day, and it's just like, this person's name, I'm going to kill you, you bit. And I was like, most effective use of communication. Oh yeah, good times. Yeah, fun times. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to return two types of the same. Let's see what happens. So like so. I'm just going to call them both test. So essentially they're just the same. We don't need that. We can just basically pass it test. And then what we can do here is say too many. Say should invoke that 0 times. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's the funniest use of configuration file I've ever seen. Okay. Passing a by activity type that return multiple values. Error formatting a string. 0 base must be greater than 0. This is less than the size of the argument list. Ooh, okay. Is it? Okay. I'm just gonna say, we're just kind of looking at how it's structuring this logic. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all. Just gonna say that and then one. Let's see if this is gonna work it now. Yeah, but yeah, that does. How you learn all this PowerShell? I'm finding I feel like I'm pretty decent, but then I'm not keeping up. How did I learn this? Well, I've been writing since 2012, so I've been many years. Um, many years. But honestly, for me, the best way I learn PowerShell is either one doing it, so personal projects, things like that. But at the same time, it's I'm just going to quickly fail this test to make sure it's good. But it's also like you do courses, run user group. Like I run a user group, which help the community out, but as well as it's like helps me out a lot, keeps me up to date and up to scratch, forcing me to keep because I have to provide to the community. So it keeps me on my toes and making sure that I'm always up to scratch with the latest and greatest. But yeah, that's really those kinds of things. Is that, and I found that if you get really involved in the community, it generally helps a lot because, because you helping others forces you to learn, and that's really it. Yeah. Um, Teaching is a very effective way to learn. 100%. All right, so that is now we've tested this, and the other thing. Now, if I'm interested to see what happens here, if I get HTML form structure, let's say, okay, it'll throw, yeah. So if I do that, it'll throw a terminating error and I'll just get pushed back up to the top, which is fine. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is test what happens if we mock. Okay, cool. So the next test that we're going to do now is we're basically going to have an issue selecting the drop-down when selecting this value. Don't know why, but we need to test that. So let's go ahead and copy our standard execution. And what we're going to do here, however, there is a problem with selecting the drop-down box. So what we're going to do here is we're going to mock we're going to mock select dropdown. Why do I mock that? Okay, it's here, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to mock select dropdown with two different parameter types. This is one of the really cool things with the mock command is that if you can see here, we have select dropdown used here and select dropdown here used here. Well, we can actually do two different types of mocks. So effectively mocking is return two different types of data, mock data, based on the parameter. So let's go and grab that code quickly. Code has that. I'm just going to steal without. So where is it? It's pretty. I'm just trying to find it. Not that one. Not that one. Just trying to find this. No, it's not there. Where is it? Where is it? Just trying to find, because you parameterize the mock. Here it is. Cool. Let's grab that. So essentially, what we do is we have a parameter there called parameter filter. Now we can remove that. We don't need that. We can basically write a piece of logic that describes whether to mock this or not. So, and effectively it's just a code execution block. So you can see the parameter we're going to use this here is when we go find SE element. So we've, area tests. So here we have, so we're just going to basically say selected value. So the parameter selected value is going to equal test, because that's what we're passing in. So that's what it's looking at. So we're going to say, if it's mocked with this specific thing, do this. If it's mocked with this specific thing, which is the one down here, do something else. In that instance, we're just going to pass it the predefined value, like so. And then we're going to do two different things with it. So the first thing we need to do here, honestly, I don't like this. I'm going to probably move this over here, put that there like that. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to leave this one as is. We're not actually going to do anything with it because we don't need to. This, we're just going to throw an error. Test error. What that basically allows to do is force catch and then test this looping mechanism. So it'll fail here and then catch, fail, catch, fail, catch, and it'll do it 10 times, maybe 11 times. And then from that, it'll then we should see an output. Well, actually, no, sorry, we won't see an output, but we can assert based on the execution of the specific, these commandlets. So we can just use start sleep and we can assert on that. So let's do that. So we can just pretty much say that. Do we need select drop down? We don't need that. So we can basically call the same error. Oh, sorry, the same thing, and then we can just say should throw. We're going to assert. What's it going to throw? I don't think it's going to throw anything. Oh, nothing, because we're using try. We actually need to mock. We need to mock right error. So I don't want to see the mock with. We just need to mock it out. So we don't actually want to see right error. Like we don't want to see errors. So it should. It might not actually throw an error. It actually should not throw an error. Honestly, an output would be really nice here. So now what we can do is we can basically work out. So it's going to go 10 times. So we can just basically say start sleep is going to be, it's going to say times is, say, let's just say longer than 1. We also can assert should have invoked right error, and we can just say times is 1. It should have invoked select drop down at least twice. That should have never been invoked. Zero. And that should be that. So let's just see what happens here. This is going to be very interesting. Okay, so stay in execution was a problem with selecting drop-down box. Expected no exception to be thrown, but exception calling invoke with 0 arguments. Error formatting a string, index 0 base must be greater than 0. Okay, so we've got an issue there. So what we can do is have a look at what's going on inside of there. Easiest way to do that is start the breakpoint gun and breakpoint it all. Okay, so we're inside our value here. So let's just have a quick look, see what this is going to do. So you see the first problem is that I didn't mock properly. So let's fix that up. Selected value. Match type. Oh, yeah, okay. Selected value is test squid. Okay, let's see what happens now. Alright, what I might do is I'm going to take a quick toilet break after this, and I will be back in 5 minutes. Okay, cool. Let's leave it there. I'm going to have a quick toilet break. We'll be back in 5 minutes, and I'll carry on where we were. Alright, see you soon. All right, I'm back. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So, okay. So select drop down ×2, right error ×1. Pause issue. Error formatting a string. Index must be 0 base. Blah 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 blah. So what we can do now is just see. Let's just rerun it. Let's break out the breakpoint gun. See what's going on here. So first things first, it's not actually mocking it for some reason. It's not mocking it. Should be throwing an error. It also helps if I actually put the right command that we should be mocking. So let's go ahead and do that now. Rather than using the wrong command, let's actually go ahead and re-execute. See what happens now. So it's technically breakpointed on that. I'm just going to F5 it. See where we're going. Where are we going? Okay, so it looks like we do have now an issue. Just want to check what the issue is. Cannot invoke with 0 test error. Perfect. That's the error, so it has mocked it. So let's carry on. Let's see what happened. And now I'm just going to remove it. Now the reason why the breakpoints are all over the shop is because I've made changes to the file, but I haven't reloaded it in PowerShell, so it's kind of going off the old one. Now we got a pass test, but like all good people, we need to fail our test before we can actually think it's a good test, because we need to make sure that the logic is working correctly. If you want to learn if you want to learn unit testing, I actually learned it in C#. And there's a really good course by Mosh. And I actually just I use him as my course provider. Let me see if I can find it. I actually went and watched it on YouTube, and it was that good. I actually just went and bought the course because there was a whole bunch of extra content in the course that was really good. And so I'll just quickly paste the link. So this is a really good unit testing course that you can use. That can basically teach you. It's C#, so that's the only difference is that. And you can but the key thing to understand is logic on how to actually test. So using the AAA method. So arrange, act, and assert. And if you can do that, then basically, again, like you can translate it from language to language. It's just being able to actually understand the intricacies for that specific language. So that's working well. So let's just say that's 0. So now we have standard execution, but there's a problem with the drop-down box. Fantastic. So that one is done. So the next one is we need to test what happens if for some reason wait for JavaScript fails. So we can just go ahead and grab standard execution again. And here, standard execution, however, because honestly, I'm thinking I actually might need to refactor this. Because if it can't actually select the area for whatever reason and it fails, right now it'll actually just fall out and it will assume that it's working. I think I'm going to need to put it as an output and say let's say success. Just going to say true. So if it's true, then it's good. If it's null or false, then it's not. And then what we're going to do here is let's say if output is not equal to true. So if it's null, if it's false, for whatever reason, then we're going to throw a terminate. We need to fail. So throw a terminating error. We're going to say throw, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a custom error. We're going to say error area failure. I'm going to go error could not set MVP area unable to continue. Could not set MVP area within HTML form. Unable to continue, so we can then just go and we can go localize data like so. So ultimately that ensures that's kind of like that'll ensure that it'll get picked up. So now if we rerun our tests, this is going to actually fail a whole bunch of tests because it's going to throw a terminating error. So this should fail. Because it failed to actually execute. Now the reason why it ran is because I actually didn't reload this. So now if I reload this and rerun this, it should fail. Perfect. So you can see there, however, there's a problem with selecting drop-down box. About execution, script halted was thrown. So perfect. That actually should. Okay, so wait for JavaScript needs to now throw. And it should throw. So that should be fixed there. Wait for JavaScript throw test error. Should invoke start sleep. I'm just gonna grab these ones. Wait for JavaScript select drop down twice. Wait, right error. And it should throw a terminating error. Oh, it's going to fail because it's going to actually trigger it multiple times, so we need to fix that. Just say run it a couple of times. So the next time around it should work. And then we're good to go. Okay, yep. So you can see there. Ooh, see the retry limit. Yep. Cool. Area standard, however. Yeah. And the other thing you can see here is we didn't actually mock right error. So let's go ahead and do that now. That'll get rid of that. We don't need that. But we actually also need to have that. Then run this, and this should fix it. Cool. 5 tests done. So I think that is pretty much it. I'm not going to test anything else, but that's done for area. So let's go ahead. Do you work with Microsoft on anything? I'm not a PowerShell genius, no. I'm not a PowerShell genius. Do you work with Microsoft on anything? Not really. I am a Microsoft MVP, so I do work with Microsoft and collaborate within the MVP program, but not directly. I don't really do much with them. They do have a DSC module, which I'm kind of tossing up whether to get involved or not. I'm still sitting on the fence at the moment because the DSC, they've got a 365 DSC PowerShell module, which effectively allows you to reverse DSC your tenancies 365 and AAD environment, which is really good, but it's really bad at the moment. It's kind of very flaky tech. So it's improved a lot, but I'm kind of thinking about getting involved in there and cleaning it up and making it a little bit more robust. I'm kind of a bit on the fence about that at the moment. So, but no, I'm not a PowerShell genius. There's a lot more people that are smarter than me, so a lot smarter than me. All right, let's go and make our commit. So what we've done is fixed bugs with area, added unit tests. Let's go ahead and submit that. Push. And you can actually get this module as well. If you go to github.com/Michael. Actually, speaking of that, I need to fix something here quickly. I need to implement that. And you can go, GitHub Michael Selenium MVP. You can see it there. So it hasn't fully, it's still not fully complete, as you can see if you have a look at it. I literally did a pull last night just to kind of get something into master. I was like 68 pushes, 68 commits behind, so I'm kind of just trying to get there now. But if you have, you can see that there's pretty much, that's how the structure has been set up. So I'm getting there. I'm gonna have a look at the actions. Oh my god, that's so bad. That's so broken. But I'm getting there. So that's the main thing. I'm getting there. I'm just needing to fix some. I need to get my. I need to get my module. I need to get everything working, then I can actually finish my workflow, get that done. And once I finish my workflow, then I can actually write documentation for the whole process. So yeah, getting there. All right, so that's one down. That's area. So what's the next one? Connect to MVP portal. I think I'm going to have to write an integration test for this. Contribution area is very similar to area. So it has a very similar logic, so I can probably copy and paste that. MVP activities, that's going to be a pain. That's a lot of work. And value is a lot of work as well. There's a lot of logic in there. It's like 57 lines, but it's still quite extensive. I'm just thinking about how I want to do this. All right, let's do contribution area. That's probably the easiest to do right now. You can see here, I'm going to clean this code up now as well. So let's just go ahead and fix this up. For each parameter and sector value. Now, the other thing that's important with the contribution area is that you can basically pass an array. So, like, you can have multiple contribution areas. Oh, actually, this is going to be a little bit different. Yeah, this is going to be a little different because. Oh, actually, no, it's pretty similar. It's pretty similar. Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think we'll be okay. Just a bit of a code cleanup. Get rid of that. Just clean up the code a bit. So, for instance, this test is pretty much the same. So we can actually parameterize these tests to make it a bit easier to follow. So let's do some of that. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is let's just go copy this, paste. So the first thing I'm going to do is just clean up this to make sure that. So first thing is we need to get that. So it's going to do a straight find and replace. We can clean up. That's perfectly fine. So we get contribution areas. Now what we're going to do here is basically the same test. So standard execution will leave. Passing about contribution to type that doesn't exist. You see too many, so okay, cool. So first thing we need to do is get conch. That's what we can do here. Clean that up. I'm just gonna skip this one for now. Yeah, cool. Just want to make sure I can skip. So you can skip like that. What is the context? Ugh. It's just pretty much the same. It's just standard execution. Testing code paths, really. I generally don't really need context for simple things. Like, yeah, you can if you more complicated things, but I'm like, I don't really need the context here. Not with kind of just leave it with a describe and then an it's area. Oh, that's bad. I just saw something. Oh, no. It's fine. Don't worry. So we need to go contribution area. Contribution area, stand execution. Passing a bad contribution type that doesn't exist. I'm just thinking out loud. What should I do here? So we've got contribution type, contribution area. I'm just going to skip the rest of these for the time being, and we're just going to focus on this one. Okay, so contribution type. That doesn't exist. Get contribution areas, mock with, get contribution areas, mock data. Honestly, the data can pretty much stay the same. It doesn't really matter. Select drop select drop down mock with. We don't need that. We don't need that. But what we do need Let's think whether to parameterize this. I'm going to parameterize this. You don't need to mock. Just think what parameters I want. Those. Current contribution area not mark, blah blah blah. What am I building? Okay, cool. So what I'm doing is I'm building a so the Microsoft MVP portal has okay, if I take a step back. So I'm building a Microsoft it's an automated solution for people to make MVP contributions to the Microsoft portal. Now, it uses Selenium, which is not the best thing. There is a REST API. However, the REST API is only available for existing MVP members. So if you basically are an MVP, and you're going to do your resubmission, you can use the API. It's perfectly fine. There's no issues with that. But for new nominees, they only can use the web form. You can't actually use the API key. You have to be an MVP. So essentially what I did was, when I did my submission, I used Selenium to actually automate the submission. Very badly though, but the initial code was quite trash. But one of the guys I gave the code to, he was really impressed with it because it actually saved him so much time. And the problem is that the portal, when using the portal, it's quite, especially when you're making a large amount of contributions, it's quite difficult. Like things can break, and if you've obviously got like 200 contributions or more, it can get really, really frustrating, manually doing it. So this is just an automated way of doing it. However, I've refactored the code, so now it's running as a domain-specific language. So if you can effectively pass a DSL, and it will just make it so. And that's really where it's at the moment. So it's pretty much, this is all working. All the unit tests are pretty much just getting it in there. But then I need to do another refactor of the code to basically change it from to be able to make it even easier for people to use, because right now, like, I think it's quite easy to use for, it's an easy, but I want to make it easier for people who are not fully PowerShell. So that's really those non-technical people. And really what it does is it just basically gives them, you can pass a CSV into MVP activity. And then basically you can have a CSV file containing all the specific types, of all your contributions, and then it just sucks them all in and then just makes it happen. For people who actually want the customization, you can use the domain-specific language. But then basically it's just building logic into the code so that it's a lot more forgiving again. So you can see here, this is badly formatted HTML. Oh, so this is HTML. This is a badly formatted URL. The dates can be in different time zones. So for instance, if you take the time zone, from Australian Eastern Standard, so date standards are basically day, month, year. On the portal, it's basically month, day, year. So it will do automatic conversion and all that for you, so you don't have to do any of that. It literally, I'm trying to make it as so easy for a person to make a submission. It's just getting rid of any sort of issues. And the thing is that when people are doing these initial submissions, is that it took ages. Like, it takes hours to do, and they give you a large amount of time. But to be honest, though, no one wants to be spending that time doing that. So this is just this tool that allows you to kind of deal with that. And the tool's designed so it's able to handle lots of issues that arise in the portal. So sometimes JavaScript doesn't run, and then the HTML elements don't get created. So it's basically able to handle all that and be able to manage all those kinds of little bits and pieces, and then build into a nice format that people can use. So that's really what it is. So I'm just kind of thinking about this. So what I'm going to do is pass the cases. Get contribution area, level marks. that. Honestly, it shouldn't actually. What's it gonna throw? So right now, contribution areas. Just gonna throw an error here. All right, so once we've done that, just trying to find something I can work with. Oh, Michael, no. We can use this. Just get my name. So we don't want to see any sort of errors. What else do we need to mark? Select drop down. Multiple. Do we actually need to get the HTML form structure? I don't think we need it. No, I can go. We don't need you. So we can get rid of that. We can get rid of this. Don't need to start sleep. Oops. No, we don't need to unlock start sleep. But honestly, I'm going to chuck that up in there because we don't really care about that. We clean this up a bit more. Alright, so area value should throw localized data error, missing selected value. The one thing I'm looking at here though is that, see, you got brand selected value. So ultimately, we can pass selected values in. Now it's going to throw an error. Okay, so if we pass even 2 in, we should still have the same issue. So, okay, cool, that's fine. Let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens. All right, we got 2 failed tests. That's fine because we passed 2 in with parameterized value. The parameter selected value star could not be found or to be thrown, but the message cannot convert argument. Okay, missing selected value. just have a quick look at what I'm doing wrong there. Let's just breakpoint gun and have a quick look. Okay. Just gonna put the breakpoint here. Why is it having an issue? I'm just gonna have a quick look to see if it's basically a formatting issue, but I'm just gonna quickly. Also helps if we're passing in the correct actual, the correct command that we're actually supposed to be testing. Look at that old chestnut. It's fine. Okay, contribution error, passing back contribution type doesn't exist. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna drop a breakpoint there. Just gonna rerun that because I think I haven't reloaded it, so it's not particularly. That's just got awfully loud again, didn't it? The music. So using pest as a test to your contribution submission automation. Yes. So okay. So initially this is just your unit tests, but then what I have built is a React site, which will then I'll write my integration testing for. So this is just testing the unit test, and then basically, like, ultimately you can't test against production because one, I actually need to log in. So I've just built a kind of a mock site here. It's really basic, and I mean really basic, but it kind of essentially emulates with the same element names. So then basically we can just write tests for it, integration tests, and then just basically let them run and see what happens. Okay, so that's fine. Get contribution areas. Just want to make sure that this is coming up. Okay, that's going to mock with an error. Oh, no, we don't. We don't want it to mock with an error. We actually want to mock it with a valid value. Okay, where's... But now to come to think of it, I actually probably should test that as well. What happens if it fails, which it should throw a terminating error. Just want to make sure that that exists. Yep, there we go. And that test should pass. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh well, that's fine. Right, now before that, I just quickly want to copy and paste this. Passing a known contribution type. Passing a contribution type that doesn't exist. A known contribution type. Passing a known contribution type, contribution area type. Let's do this. And I don't really care what it throws. Actually, it should. We don't need to have test cases for this.
You don't make up for your sins in the church. You do it in the streets. You do it at home. The rest is bullshit and you know it.
Two failed tests. Passing back contribution arc doesn't exist. Will throw a terminating error. Parameter selected value, blah, found to be thrown, but the message and verification about. It's not going to name it OP edition. Okay, so we need to start. I think I'm gonna skip this one for the time being, and we're just gonna go back to something simple. And then what we're going to do here is literally just step through it. Cool stream, sorry for my low-level questions. Never used Pester. I'm only doing some basic scripting. Looks really interesting. I have to look in this already. The mock command gets me excited if I think about the possibilities with it. Yeah, so the best ways to kind of describe the best way to kind of think of there's three types of kind of testing. Yes, the basic types of testing, which is you've got unit testing, integration, and end-to-end. So unit testing is really just testing the functionality of the application, the code execution pass. So if you think of it as you've got a function that adds two things together, if you're basically adding, you know, a parameter 1, parameter 2, you basically say, okay, if you're adding 1 plus 1, then you can assert that it's true. But mocking is really, yeah, like mocking is really good for effectively. You don't, with unit testing, you're not actually, well, you shouldn't be touching a remote endpoint. So if that's an SQL server, that's anything. The goal for unit testing is to be able to actually mock the data locally so that basically you can effectively work without having to reach to an endpoint. And then you have integration testing. Integration testing is literally exactly the same as unit testing, except you actually can test with an endpoint. So and in my instance, it's actually a test site, which I can then just write some kind of tests to actually effectively test to make sure that the logic still checks out against a live or a test system, but in an HTML. So it's not mocking any data. And then basically you would have an end-to-end test, which would basically test, hey, if I provide this, you know, if I provide parameter A, parameter B, parameter C, run the end-to-end test, you know, of all the stuff, it should equal D kind of thing. So, yeah. So contribution area tests. I'm just going to step through and try and work out why this is failing. I'm going to place a breakpoint here. Okay. Yep, that's exactly what it should be. Just going to put the breakpoint there. It should throw. Okay, yeah, cool. Now the test passed. Great. So I'm just going to put something there to make sure the test fails, and then we test again. Okay, cool. It's failed because it should be throwing test, but it's throwing test 2. Oh, sorry, it's through test, but we wanted it to throw test 2. So that's working. So now passing a bad contribution type that doesn't exist will throw a terminating error. Cool. So we got that. Wait for JavaScript select drop down, contribution area values. Yep. This is where I think I need to troubleshoot. So let's go ahead and skip this. And let's uncomment and go ahead and test this one now. So this should now enumerate. Yep, we got mock data. Shouldn't exist. It does. Okay, first thing is we're not passing in proper values. I'm actually going to move that up to the top so people are not going to get confused. So let's just call this bad data 2. So now let's see what happens. This should fix it. So yep, okay, so we've got 2 tests passed. That's fine. So the next thing I want to do is fail the test and see what happens. Make sure the test fails because we need to make sure it works. Yep. And it was called 0 times perfectly. Perfect. Okay, so passing back doesn't exist. Put a comment there to make sure people let's write terminating error. So if we rerun this, that should fix it. Yep, good to go. Okay, so now what we can do is let's skip that, test that. Oh, not that one. That's not going to work. So that's standard execution. We haven't fixed that one yet. This one here. So we should have 3 tests passed. Yep, cool. All right. So the next thing we need to test now is our standard execution. So just looking at how this is going to work. So I think we should parameterize this as well, actually. So we can pass in multiple. So test. So I'm going to do here. Test 3. And what I'm going to do is add some additional acetations for 3. So what we can do here is with contribution areas, you can when you add a contribution area to the MVP portal, you have 2 drop-down boxes. So you have the first one, which you add, which is traditionally used, and then you can add a secondary one, but then you can add a third one. But the third one's a little different. So the third one, you actually have to click a link, which basically adds the element to create that. So what we have to do is we basically had to write an additional acetation. So if there's a third drop-down box, if there's a third item, we want to we want to assert that that it was clicked correctly. So effectively, we just say click the add selection, and that will add that extra drop-down box so we can actually use it. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we can do is just basically say that we can just actually say this. We can say should invoke and that way we can actually test to make sure that this is correct. I think find SE element. Is find SE element around? Nope. Okay, we can use that as well. This opens in totally a new perspective for me if I think about some automation scripts I normally have to test in a spare test environment first. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. So the goal of it is to be able to write code that can be effectively recycled and reused in different environments. So in this instance, within contribution areas, like I say, for in this instance, it means that you can test your code without having to test it against production, making it way better and way more safe. Effectively, it's a better use of what if. So if you think about the old what if switch. All right, so we're going to test standard execution cases. So let's just go through and see what we need to mock. Get contribution area. Yep, so that's mocked. Select drop down. Do we need to mock that? Yeah, we're going to need to mock that.
We don't need to mock it with anything, so that's fine. We need to mock wait for JavaScript. Yep. We're mocking start sleep, so that's fine. Wait for JavaScript. So this should be. So what we're going to say is param. Now we're going to say the values, and then we're also going to say assert. Now what we can do here is we can just basically call assert down here, and we can then go invoke like so, and that'll invoke those assertions there. Oops. And so that will ensure that if it's within the third value, it'll do some additional assertions without having to do any sort of if statements. We basically can use test cases to to do that. So so if we go values, so result area, contribution area. Should not throw, so there should be no errors at all. Should all be good. So get HTML form structure, test SE driver. Honestly, I could literally just like write a generic assertion for all of these, but I won't. Yeah, should be it. See what happens. Let's just run this and see what happens. Let's go ahead and run that. Okay, it's blown up. Why is it blown up? Because it's null. Why is it null? Contribution area values. Because we didn't pass any test cases. Let's go ahead and pass our test cases. Like so. And let's go and rerun that. Okay, contribution area, stand execution. Okay, so we're passing through. Does not contain method OP addition, was thrown, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at what is going on there. Have a quick look at values. Yep, that looks good. I'm just going to quickly run it, see what it does. Interesting. I'm going to drop a breakpoint there and see what's going on. So something's going on with our match activity type. contribution areas. I find it interesting though, that's the data that we're looking at. I think that's a bug there. There's a bug there. So interesting to find out what is going on with this variable as well. So I'm just going to search in here for it to see what's going on. Interesting. So MVP activity is setting it up, so that's what we need to do. So what we need to do here is add a before. We could even just before each actually. So before each execution, do that please. And we fix the bug at the same time because we're just looking at data. So let's go ahead and run that. So let's go ahead and run that. Let's get rid of that. Shouldn't throw any errors. Was called time one. Get HTML form structure to be called, but it was called exactly 0 times. Yeah, it's because we didn't actually use it. That's fine. All right, stop. Please stop. Okay, cool. Let's just go ahead and make sure there's no breakpoints. Cool. Good. All right, so contribution area values. So get HTML form structure. I don't think is even used. Yeah, we're not even mocking it, so that can go. Let's just give this a go now. Get contribution areas. Yes, this is one of the things. It was called exactly 2 times. So what we can do is just use the times parameter. So we assume it's going to at least get called once. That's what we care about. So let's rerun that. Because remember, we're passing it in multiple times. Okay, yep. An exception, no target, valid target was provided. Interesting. Okay, so we're still having some issues here. Okay. No valid target was provided. What target would be that? So this is where it's really quite handy to have all this content because you can kind of yeah, muck around with it and you can weed out bugs. And I think I've just found another bug. Or I'm just not mocking something, which is probably another thing. See what this does. Are we mocking find SEL? Yeah, we're not mocking it, that's why it's failing. Okay, so we need to do an additional mock here. We can just say mock. Or are we? Nope. So we can just basically say SE element. And we can also mock invoke SE click like so, like that, and we can just mock like so. But we can actually do this as well. We can say mock here is equal to that. Mock like so, and then we can actually assert that these values should be exactly 0 because that code shouldn't have been ran when there's 1 value, 2 values, or 3 values being passed in. So we can actually do that, and then what we can do here is we go mock, and then we can just invoke the mock like so. And then let's go ahead and rerun it. Okay, lots of errors. Why is that? What are we having issues with? Cannot convert value type string to system automation script block. Cannot process argument, transformation, or parameter filter. Cannot convert the but okay, cool. So we got one failure, and I'm guessing it's because of this. So find SE element needs to actually return some data. So let's mock some data. So we can just say return. We don't care about the data. What we need to do though is we need to mock that, and we need to not put parameter filter in. We need to exclude the type. Let me just see if I can remember what it's called. So because it's expecting a specific type, we're just passing it a PS custom object. It will fail, but what we can do is we can hack it and use remove parameter type to actually get around that. So now we invoke SE click and then remove the parameter type element. It'll fix that. What is your day job? My day job, I'm an automation bloke. So I work in, I generally do a lot more software development, but generally, yeah, I work in automation. That's really what my day job is. So let's go ahead and rerun this. All right. So the thing with a test is that we always need to make sure the test fails prior to actually saying it's good to go. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to test the one of the parameter sets, and we're just going to assert that it didn't actually call this. So that's working. So let's now fail this test. We're basically saying that it should have executed that code, but it didn't, so it'll fail. So we're going to say that's good. And then let's just test this bit.
And that looks good too. Okay, so now we have 3 sets of tests. We got a whole bunch of tests written. And in this instance, we just used test cases or parameterized testing to do the test for us, so we don't have to write 3 sets of tests. And then we just used a bit of PowerShell trickery to dynamically invoke this this code without actually having to make massive changes to our structure. Cool. All right, so that's that. Shouldn't throw any errors. Which is good. Passing no contribution type. Yep. Okay, so we've done standard execution. We've done that. We've done all that. We've done that. So now we need to test what happens when stuff breaks within. I don't think we need to test this. We might need to in the future, but I'm just going to leave it as is for the time being. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it for the time being. So I'm going to try and get this finished today, because I'm going to probably end the stream soon. So we need to fail this, really, to be honest. All right, so let's do that. So stand execution is a problem. Stand execution. Selecting the drop-down box. Yep, that's pretty much that. Command name, get contribution areas. Command select drop-down, parameter filter. Selected value, test GUID. Select drop-down, throw test error. Select drop-down, selected value, localize. Okay, so element article. Oh no! It's gonna be that. So we need to fix that up. And then we're going to say match type is value. So that's going to be. It doesn't meet. It needs this. Throw test error, get contribution errors, select drop down, do that, write error, mock that. Are we globally mocking that? I think we are. Okay. So let's just add that. Ooh, okay. Let's just fix that up. See what happens here. I expected that. It's a problem. Expected select drop down to be called at least 2 times, but it was called once. No, it should have been called twice. That should be that. And that should be test. Yep. So it's going to breakpoint there and work out what the dealio is. So what you do is just paste that, see what happens. It's a bit of a problem. Let's just go have a look at it. Usually this is an error that's going to be something like, I'm going to breakpoint there, breakpoint here. Let's see where our issue is. Oh, we need to stop that. And what we can do is skip this. I'm just going to put skip at the beginning. Skip. Skip. Let's fix this issue. What I'm quickly going to do is, well, just quickly drop a breakpoint here to make sure that we're in this test when, just make sure that you're in this test and we're actually testing the correct thing. Okay, yep, cool. All right, let's make sure what's in param. Yep, cool. Activity type. Let's see what's in here. It should be fine. Yep, okay, we've got test data. Let's just hit F5. Okay, cool. What's an element ID? Okay, yep, so that's working. What's in here? Yep, that should be working. Now that should mock. So what we should be able to do is run that and we should get a mock, which we do. We get a throw test error. So that's working. So let's just drop a breakpoint here. So that's not working. Contribution error dot element ID. So here we go. We just found a bug. So this is not working at all. But what we can say is -1, and we can do this. So -1 is basically the last value that was added. So, and that's basically the same as doing in that. So we don't actually have to create a variable, we can just use -1. And get the last item, which would be that. I'm just going to quickly run this. Yep, cool, and that's mocked. Fantastic. So, what we need to do now, because we actually found a bug, is let's go ahead and reload contribution area, and then rerun our tests. We should have error. That is not going to be the case. It's going to be a completely different error. So let's go and fix that. So what error should we get? Ooh, it actually might not. It won't throw an error. Should not throw. And it should do that. And it should. Yep. And then let's go ahead and run this.
Cool. So that's passed. All right, next thing we need to do. Let's fail our test and make sure it's still a good test. Cool. All right, that's fixed. Good to go. So this one's done. Just gonna have a skip here. All right, so next one is passing bad activity type that's return multiple values. Have we done that? We've done that already. Sustain execution, passing a no contribution type, however, contribution type is terminating error. Passing contribution area type that doesn't exist. Passing bad. So we need to do this one. So this should literally be the same as that. The only difference, get contribution areas. Is the values that the only difference is that the values that we pass in here should throw a different error. So let's have a quick look at it. The error that it's going to get is error too many. It should be 2. Which means we need to mock this with if we go to area test, we can just mock it with this. So effectively, it's just passing back 2 items that are the same. So we're kind of testing the fact that they're basically this. What happens if you've got something in there that's the same? So it does the global, gets the contribution areas, wait for JavaScript, select drop down. What that is. Oh. Get that. Let's wait for drop down, contribution area values, should invoke set drop down exactly 0 times and see what happens. And one thing we did mock, which is right error, so we need to mock that as well. Mock name right error. Mock with like so. So passing a bad contribution type, yeah, expected an expression, but the parameter selected value returned too many items, count 2 to be thrown. But the message was cannot bind selected value because it's null. Okay, why is that the case? Is because we actually don't need that. We only need to test like that. We don't need to parameterize this, we just can pass it in. Because we already tested it. Okay, cool. That's worked. So let's fail it. Switch that to 2 to be a 1. And see what happens. Okay, cool. That's working. Alright, let's switch that back. So, and let's just make sure that's working correctly. Yep, cool. Alright, perfect. So, that one's done. Okay, standard execution, but however, wait for JavaScript fails because the form is bad. All right, so if that's the case, we can use the same logic as what was passed in up the top, except we'll wait for JavaScript fails because the form is bad. So what we can do here is just basically throw error, test error, like so, and then what we can say here is mock invoke. Yep, you have contribution areas. We could still do the same assertion so that it's basically running all, like it's running the correct, going down through the correct code path. Oh, that's an interesting one because I think it will break actually. And the reason why is because I actually don't think we need to mock. I'm going to allow it, but we're not going to actually, we don't need to invoke any assertions. Because this, the 3 values, it shouldn't even get to 3. It should only be invoked once. Oh, this should be invoked 0 times because it'll throw a terminating error. Or will it? No, it won't. It'll treat it as a normal process. So let's add all that in. And then let's wait for JavaScript. Yep, and then we're going to basically say select drop down. So we can just use start sleep. We can mock select drop down. We don't really care about that. This will be interesting to see what happens here. You cannot call a null on a interesting. Let's do that, and let's drop some breakpoints in here, and let's work out what's going on. So I'm just going to hit a breakpoint there. But let's just run it. Right. That. Is this failing? Why is this failing? The reason why is we haven't passed in the test case. Well, I still think this is going to fail, but we will see. We will see. Alrighty. It's having a long, hard think about it. It's a good thing or it's a bad thing. It's either in an infinite loop, which is a bad thing, or it's I think it's inside an infinite loop. Don't know how though. Wow, that was slow. Oh, you know, no, it's mock start sleep, so it shouldn't have actually slept. I'm just going to drop a start sleep there. See what happens.
I just want to see how long, like what's slowing this down, because it shouldn't have been that slow. No, it's mocking. I don't know why it's running so slow. I don't really care about any of that. Jeez, it's running slow. Like, that's how quick it should run. It should be able to loop through multiple times. All the data's mocked, so it shouldn't actually do any sort of sleeping or anything like that. That's something I'm going to have to look at, why it's taking so long to actually run that test. Something's not right there. It's taking too long to run. Everything should be sleeping or mocked, so it literally just is not, it's actually not doing anything, it's just testing logic. Alright, well, let's just see what happens when we zero something out. Make sure our logic works. I think that's obviously that's, you know, expected. So let's say actually we'll just that actually should be fine. Alright, cool. I think that is it. So let's leave it there. These tests can be refactored later, but having a test in place is a good thing anyway. So what's that to? Have I missed any? Nope. Alright, let's go run another check. Look at that. 0900. Perfect. Oh man, this is taking forever. It shouldn't take this long to run. It shouldn't take this long to run. I'm gonna can it. And then what we're going to do is rerun our loader. That's fine. Let's go and test contribution area. Let's go and read this tab. There we go. Cool. All right. Sweet. That's way better. All right. Cool. All right. So now let's run our tests. Okay. So we've still got some issues. Fast was the form was bad. Get area global mark is not recognized. Okay, I'm just gonna restart that because that's weird. Let's rerun that. Okay, something going on there, but that's fine. So that's something else that we need to work on. So I need to fix
the actual invocation of the tests, which is fine. And let's go ahead and push. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. Good outcome for today. Lots of stuff that's completed. Obviously a bit of red text on the end of the screen there, but that's all right. It's all good. So yeah, thank you guys if you're sticking around and watching. Hope you learned something, enjoyed it. Sitting there, good chatting to you guys. So I'm going to leave it for today. Yeah, hopefully I'll be back either next weekend, and we will be carrying on with this. And obviously I'm going to be still working on this in my spare time, so most likely this will be completed, and then we will probably next week be working on the React site, and see how we're at with that. Otherwise, it'll just be writing some Docker and basically even might be writing some integration testing in that. So integration testing, I think, is going to be the very last thing that we're going to test, but yeah, we'll see where we're at. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Anyway, bye for now.